Yep. Okay. Let's put this on Do Not Disturb. That's Kosher. Excellent. So last time we started looking at Siman Tzadiches 98, chapter 98 in the Tur, in Hilchos Tarovis, and we pointed out a little bit of the history of the Tur, and we pointed out that when it comes to being mevatel isurim, when it comes to getting rid of some kind of forbidden substance, something that you can't ingest, right? Don't eat this thing. So if you pick up a piece of that thing and eat it, that is violating an Isser in the Torah. The question is, what happens? You don't pick up that thing and eat it. You ate it in the context of other stuff, right? Meaning you didn't eat that thing. You ate that thing and. So the question then is, at what point in time does something become no longer that thing? That is what is called in halacha bittul, nullification, right? Meaning, at what point in time does pork stop being pork, right? At what point in time does treif meat stop being treif meat? At some point in time, you have to say that it isn't, right? Because theoretically, I mean, just bizarre example, like, is inhaling a molecule of pig an Isser? Hot.
What if you're walking along the beach and there's a luau and they're roasting a pig?
Right, and you breathe.
Yeah.
Right, like, yeah. So, like, is that an Isser? Like,
it's good that example came up because I was while you started, I wanted to ask you to clarify, do you mean intentional or unintentional?
So at this point in time, we're not even talking about intention. We're talking about
brings up a whole different thing because could you purposely go to the luau to purposely smell the smell of the roasting pig?
So
we'll not eat it.
So we'll get there. We'll get there in a minute, or in a few minutes rather. But no, there is no what we refer to as an Isser Hana. No, there's no Isser Hana. There's no prohibition about getting non-eating benefit from a pig, meaning at least on a biblical level. There might be other issues. We'll get there in a bit.
You can't sell it and get it.
You could. Yeah, a pig you could.
But not meat.
Meat and milk is an Isser Hana. That's a separate din.
Yeah. Okay. So that doesn't apply to non-kosher animals.
Correct.
Okay. Interesting.
Well, so we'll get there. But what we're talking about here is not intention. What we're talking about is the chemistry and physics of halacha. And I said in that context because every system has rules of where to draw the line between different gradations of what something is or isn't. So you could ask the question, like, if a person is driving 1 mile per hour over the speed limit, right? Have they broken the law? The answer is yes. Yes, they have. Now, a cop might not stop you for driving 1 mile over the speed limit. Might be difficult for a cop to prove that you were driving 1 mile per hour over the speed limit. That's a challenging thing to, like, nail down. But fundamentally speaking, like, could your Tesla snitch on you? Yes. Right? Like, that's a thing that could happen. By the way, it's for sure going to happen.
Absolutely.
Right?
So this is similar to drinking water. We know there's organisms in there, bugs or whatever.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, Chazal says if you can't visually see it,
yes,
then
yes, the bugs in the New York water.
I was about to say, there's still people in New York who
But Rav Moshe Feinstein drank it, and God wouldn't bring Tzaddik to sin, so therefore it's okay.
Well, that might not be that relevant because it might be that they only added that in later, but it's a separate question. Yeah. Yeah.
A question I want to throw into the hopper.
Yeah.
You don't have to name an answer for it yet. Let's say someone thinks they're being cheeky and pranks you, and they hit you in the face with a cream pie or a custard pie or something like that, and it's got no kosher ingredients in there. You try and wipe your face off; it's in your mouth and everything like that. You're not going to get it all off. Just to throw
some goes into your
you're
face.
Going to ingest a component.
Something, right?
Yes. Say you're open mouth.
Excellent. Excellent.
Okay? Who knows? Maybe they used they made a pie and they used some kind of animal fat in there. Who knows?
Right. Anything?
Or-
I mean,
Mine, if you want, man.
all possibilities. We just started. Tell them come. Yeah, tell them come.
He answered the phone. He called me.
Motion?
I didn't answer it.
No.
I told him where I am.
Tell-
He-
Don't
Tell him we need him.
Moshe
We need him.
grandfather had a bracha under my foot.
Oh, wow.
So I go back and look.
That's yeah. That's Baruch Hashem.
This is the grandfather.
Oh, the grandfather is not living. It's-
Zaidi?
Yeah.
Zaidi.
Yeah,
Zaidi.
the one-
Zaidi
I
Seinfeld.
don't know. It was
The one that he has a picture of.
Yeah. Zaidi. That's it. So okay. Meaning there has to be a line of where something is no longer that thing. I'll give you a couple of just fun examples. Bittul is one question. There's a question that exists about bittul, which is what we're talking about here. At what point in time is something nullified? Meaning, if you have one molecule of pig that is mixed into a gigantic pot of cholent, then is the cholent not kosher because of the one molecule of pig? So what we've seen so far is no, that is not true, right?
Taste it.
Yeah, if you could taste it, maybe it would be, right? So at what point in time do you draw the line? So that's
What's the
Or is it, is it based on, is it if you have a big pot of children versus a bigger pot of children?
yes. So we're gonna we're gonna get to all of that. But I want to just chip beyond that, just to throw things into the mix as well. Is that we're getting there? Hold on. Well, some of them are going to be mevatel, right? No, don't worry.
He answers that.
Yes. And so just a fascinating conversation that comes up. The question of gelatin. The question of gelatin is a fascinating case study in unintuitive halachic understandings. And what I mean by that is the following. Is gelatin is made out of what? Bones, right?
Yeah, there are different types.
Bones, meaning
The most common.
1800s to 1900s, right? Gelatin is made out of bones. How do you make it? You take bones, you grind up the bones, you mix it with some stuff, pretty much, that turns it into some, I mean, it's chemically transformed, basically. It's dissolved into some kind of solution that basically takes that, breaks it down, and uses the collagen that's inside of it to make some kind of gummy stuff. That is called gelatin. Now, here's a crazy question for you. Are you allowed to eat pig bones?
Spartan can because it's broken down and becomes a new
Hold on,
thing,
hold
but Ashkenazim don't.
Before we get there, are you allowed to eat
No.
pig
No,
bones?
'cause it's
No.
not Tahora.
Are you allowed to eat pig hooves?
No, it's not Tahora.
So let me share the following with you. Are hooves food?
Not typically. If
Are they
someone
food?
eats them, they become food.
Are they food?
When someone eats them, or when a
Let me ask you.
culture eats it.
I would think that it has the same criteria as
Is a
when they
hoof-
say
oh, wait.
is chametz.
Hold on one
When they
second.
say chametz is chametz. If a
Wait one
dog-
second.
If a
Before-
dog will eat
Chametz
it,
is
what's
a-
the-
We'll get there. Hold on.
How much is a
Yeah.
mushroom? There's no
I
sugar.
don't know.
But a dog will
The
eat.
dish
If
is
a dog eats it,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
considered.
Yes.
If like
Are there
a
shampoos that
a
eat
dog will
pig
not
feet?
eat shampoo.
No, no.
you know?
Ask a question.
Hold on one second.
Shampoo shouldn't have to be-
If I go to my tree outside, I go to a tree. I pick a piece of wood off that tree, and I eat that wood on Tisha B'Av. Have I eaten food on Tisha B'Av?
No.
No, why?
Because wood's not food.
Wood is not food. If I go up to my horse and I shave the hooves of my horse, smoothing it down, and I take those grindings, I go
Sounds
num num num.
disgusting.
Revolting, right? That's the point. It's not food.
It's not food.
It's not food.
No, it's not food.
Well,
How
how does
halacha
wait, how does
non-kosher animal?
how does halacha define?
That's
food?
not true.
How does halacha define food?
Yeah.
That's the
So
question, because how science defines food and how me and you might define food is not
Totally different,
it's
right?
how halacha
It's
defines
not
So-
food though. It's bone. It's bone.
I would say a dog
Yeah,
would chew on the.
So- no, a dog will chew on it, but a dog will not eat it.
Not
Yes,
for
I mean,
teething
it
purposes.
would chew on it.
Not
for
like that.
flavor. I
How
guess.
does halacha
So-
define food? How does it
So hold on
define
one second.
food?
Whoa, whoa.
Bones from a whole.
Let's
But I
just
don't eat bones from a.
Okay, so why are
No
why
one
are
eats-
the bones- why are the bones crushed down for gelatin
So-
considered food then?
so arguably, look, marrow inside of bones is
not-
food.
And
It is.
That is
bones
food.
are used for flavoring. That's why I put it in my tongue.
So no, the marrow inside the
But
bones are
then
used for
you're
flavor.
talking about
No, the bones have no
but then
flavor.
you're
No,
talking
because I use
about-
knuckle bones too.
I'm saying, but the bone,
Okay,
you're
so-
looking for the stuff that's like, but the bones itself, what you
No,
actually make the
because-
gelatin out of,
because
has
how
no
you
flavor.
How you make beef broth is you put apple cider vinegar onto bones and it draws
And it
out
draws
the
out stuff,
minerals,
correct.
And minerals is what you want to eat.
Right.
There's a lot of minerals.
So
that
to the best of my
help
knowledge,
with
the
bones.
rest of the stuff is what they make gelatin out of.
Let's talk about
Stuff
the
that
bone
doesn't have
itself.
flavor.
The fact of the matter
Right.
is the bone the bone itself
It's a piece of wood.
has nothing.
It's a piece of
the
wood. That's what it
inside,
is.
The marrow does have.
That has flavor and that's real. That's food.
It has flavor, has sustenance. It's actually one of the most.
It's incredibly nutritious.
Right.
But the bone itself is not.
There
The
is
stuff that you
no
make
bone.
gelatin out
Let's
of
Let's
is
just call it inedible. The bone
right.
is
It's
inedible.
not.
It is,
It's correct.
it
It is
is.
not
Until
food.
Until you cook it long enough and then
Also-
you can chew on it and eat it.
Right.
Because like with like if you ever get
Even
canned
with
salmon,
fish, listen,
sometimes
Right.
you have the
when you
fish.
eat
You
whole-
can
Yeah.
you end up
When
grinding
you eat whole fish, you eat
sardines.
whole bones,
Right.
But there's nothing
Sustenance.
nutritious. There's nothing of
That's not
substance
true.
about
So-
it.
Bones have tons of minerals. That are good.
So-
Not in the fish. In the fish,
So-
they don't.
okay.
So,
but
Again,
maybe-
the
maybe it's
question on a fundamental level is
I don't know if that's true.
if you take pig flesh is for sure not kosher, right? It is a behemoth tamea.
I'm
Pig-
hungry, I am.
Pig hooves are not food. So the question is, if I make food out of it, does that now make it a food? That's the fundamental question of
Pig
gelatin.
ears or I don't know.
They eat-
Yeah. So
Pig
those,
feet or
but that's that.
We eat chicken feet.
No,
That's-
that's flesh. There's
But that's the
something-
stuff that's there. Yeah.
Ears
Yeah.
like cartilage.
Yeah. I mean, but people eat
He's
the
saying
stuff
the
around.
I would
Animal
have
part
to
is
say,
not
I would
right.
have to, I would have to call a big no on that.
But we.
On what?
On the
Child.
it having any possibility of being kosher.
So
you're saying ears.
practically,
being edible.
so again,
We're
not saying-
so here's the point:
You
is that
can't touch that.
oh, hold on a second, whoa, whoa.
There's a difference between
If it's
kosher and
if it's not
kosher.
if it's not food,
Yeah, I see it too.
if it's not food, then there's no prohibition of eating it.
It's removed from it.
It's not food,
It's not applicable to it.
right?
So the prohibition is not on pig products.
Right,
It's on pig nourishment.
right. Well, it's on eating food from a pig.
Right.
So the question is something that isn't food that you turned into food. That's the fundamental question about gelatin. There's a lot of follow-up questions to it. But the reason that I bring this up, almost like the reason that I bring this up is because drawing the line between when something is, one, a food, and two, prohibited, is not always intuitive. Meaning, intuitively, if I say to you, can you eat anything from a pig? You would say, absolutely, definitely not. Right? But theoretically, if you were to eat a bone of a pig, that might not be prohibited. Certainly not on a level of deraisa.
May I ask you?
But maybe there are. There's what to talk about.
May
Yeah.
I ask about that bone? Are we discussing a bone that has been shorn, bleached, blasted,
Yes.
whatever it is?
Nothing's left on it.
So we have emptied the bone.
Yeah.
No
We have
matter.
made it the wonder bread of bones.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So once we're at the point of just a calcium deposit in the big shape of a pig femur,
Right.
we're good.
Right. So
I could-
theoretically speaking, right. Theoretically speaking,
So-
that's
so-
not food.
Question. We can technically pick our teeth with the bones of our enemies and drink wine from their skulls because that doesn't count as food if we approach it the right way.
Maybe. Yeah.
Well, no,
It's a
that's the
vessel,
method.
it's a
Yes.
clay.
It's probably not good education, but
This is
Yeah.
going wrong.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's an example.
Right.
Let's get these skull pups.
Exactly.
From our enemies.
Um,
You get it
Baruch
with
Hashem.
Amalek. I'm sorry, I
Okay.
thought we were anti-Amalek.
That's-
This sends a message to Amalek.
yeah. So let's talk tachlis,
Start with
Sabra.
pigs, we'll get to
Meanwhile,
yeah.
Next round on Kiddush Club, definitely in for one of these skull pups.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's
Yeah.
we'll tell Josh Yablon. You want-
for charity.
No, you want your name on it, right? We'll tell
Yeah,
Yablon that
right
you want it
between the eyes,
engraved.
give him the unibrow.
Yeah. Chevra. So deciding when something is food or isn't food is first and foremost a question of how do we identify this substance? What is it? What is its definition? Now, and the definition of it requires a well-developed understanding of where the beginning and end of an Isser is. And what we pointed out last week is that if you have something that is Osir, that is mixed in with something that is Mutter, and they are unidentifiable pieces, 2 pieces of kosher meat with 1 piece of non-kosher meat, according to everybody, you can at least eat one of them, because that would be a majority. 2 to 1 is a majority, and eating one of those pieces is therefore allowed. That is a suffix de'oraisa, but we have a way of solving that suffix. It's a doubt in the biblical law, but we have a methodology of solving that doubt, and that is called majority. So 2 pieces of non-kosher, 2 pieces of kosher meat and 1 piece of non-kosher meat. All 3 look identical. I have no way of telling them apart, but I know 2 are kosher and 1 is not. I can eat at least 1 of them. I might be able to eat 2 of them. I might be able to eat 3 of them. I might be able to eat all 3 of them at the same time, like we discussed last week, right? Depending on how you understand the suffix. But at the very least, everybody agrees that I can eat 1 of them. Yeah.
What is our understanding of what the point of the law is, right? The action of the law is, because it seems there it's a matter of intent, not outcome. And so is our understanding of law like Kosher's our intent and our approach to things? So I hate to use this term, but like our subjective reality of what we're doing, or is it about the external objective reality of we must abstain from eating non-kosher meat because it's wrong to eat non-kosher meat for the sake of not eating kosher meat, versus it's wrong for us to knowingly engage in the act of eating non-kosher meat?
Both.
So in the example you provided, where there's a majority that is kosher meat, one still greatly risks, like in the realm of American civil law, or not civil law, common law, you would say someone would have reckless disregard for eating non-kosher meat,
right?
Potential risk if you were to engage in this, because there's a 33% chance that you're going to eat non-kosher meat. That would be reckless of you to do that. So that recklessness is your internal intention here. If the point of the law is our personal intent should be pure as well, why is that recklessness acceptable?
So because you have a question here of how do I view this piece of meat that's in front of me? And this piece of meat, majority of this system is kosher, and therefore I can resolve my doubt in this question by saying, okay, I don't know whether this is kosher or not kosher, but I can make a determination based on the majority of the cases in front of me. Now, we do this in every system all the time, right? Meaning, we have principles in halacha, and we're gonna be touching on all of these things of how to resolve doubts, because nothing is absolute. There's nothing that we have absolute truth on. Like, for example, the Gemara entertains the possibility, at least like as a theoretical possibility, that if you were to shecht an animal, kosher animal, it's a behemoth tahora, you shecht it, shchita, so now it's not a nevela, and you check the internal organs of the animal. So maybe that cow, bless you, that cow that you slaughtered was in fact a treifa. It was a treifa. It's going to die within a year. The blemish that is going to kill it within a year happens to be a lesion on its neck where you've slaughtered. And now you will never know.
Did you cost it?
No, you'll never know that it was going to die anyway.
You obscured it by the nature of the
Right.
cut.
But you didn't see it from the outside.
Didn't see everything outside.
The
It's on.
question is not a practical question.
Why?
Because how could you not know, but know?
No. The question is,
An
do we
external
need to
reality.
be concerned for that possibility? And the answer is it a possibility? Yes.
How far can you go? Then you can never eat any animal.
Correct. But then you can't
It
live.
doesn't
Correct.
happen.
That's why he said. That's why he said last week that if you know the majority of cows in general in the world don't have that sort of lesion, you don't have to worry about that. If a 0.2%
So we're not
of
so
the
careful.
livestock are going to have that, You
So
can rest assured
we're
that
mostly
0.2% are fines for the majority
It's not
of
that
that.
bad.
Right.
It's mostly bad.
we live in a system.
It's mostly bad.
I give this example.
You check vegetables for bugs. Does that mean that you'll never eat a bug?
Yeah,
Right.
Of course, there's someone going to miss a bug somewhere.
The point is, and this is essential to understand in the way that halacha and human life works in general, is that we don't know anything with any absolute truth. We base everything on principles of what we call rove, majority, and chazaka, which is status quo. I give the example to my students all the time. Like I was speaking to a kid last week, explaining to him the concept of chazaka, status quo. What's a status quo? I said to him, you left your house this morning in Hollywood. He said, yes. You got on a bus. Good. You came to school. Yes. Are you planning on going back to your house this evening? Yes. How do you know your house is there? How do you know?
It usually is.
Usually is, right? My experience is, right. Is it possible that his house is not there?
Well, in Florida,
Reality.
Right.
Florida with all these hurricanes.
Right. Florida man eats house, right?
Yeah.
Possible, right? It's possible. Is it a possibility? Yes, it's a possibility. Is it a possibility that we are concerned for practically? No. We live our lives happy to rely on these probabilities, right? Status quo is my house was there, therefore I will assume that it will perpetuate into the future as I see it. Now, at some point in time, that chazaka does expire, right? When? I don't know. How long do houses last?
Well,
Who knows? Right? Anything's possible,
All
right?
materials are made out of.
Right? I'm saying anything is possible. Like there are certain chazakas, that do expire at some point in time. But for all intents and purposes, we live our lives based on the chazaka that things that are will continue to be. Chazaka means status quo. The Gemara has a discussion, and in halakha we speak about this discussion a lot. Whether or not chayeshina lemisa, whether or not we are concerned that a person is going to die. Now, statistically, I don't know if you know this, but 100% of smokers die.
100% of every.
Correct. 100% of non-smokers die too.
100% of people who drink water.
Right.
I was going to say 100% of people who drown were found with dihydrogen monoxide in their lungs.
Correct. Right. So
100% of people who do heroin have drank milk.
right.
Shouldn't drink milk. It's a
Correct.
drug.
So meaning people do die. That's a truth, right? That's meaning if somebody were to make a condition, take a neder contingent on them not dying, so that would not be a valid neder, valid oath.
It's an individual man who's still alive, but he hasn't died yet.
Correct.
So we have no experience of him dying.
Right.
We don't know that he will.
So we
He's usually
we have
hold on. He's usually alive.
correct. So what
You
we
can
are
assume that he'll be alive.
what we are describing here, gentlemen, is a chazaka with a reasa, which means in halakhic terminology, we have a status quo, but we also have a separate status quo that conflicts with this one. Status quo is that this person is alive, which means that we can assume that their life will continue to perpetuate into the future. But we also know that that has an expiration. At some point, that chazaka will no longer be the case. That status quo will change, right? We know that with absolute certainty, which means that right now we can assume that somebody is alive. You can't assume that forever. So where do you draw the line? And this becomes relevant. And this becomes relevant because if somebody says, practically, how long are you allowed to delay doing a mitzvah? For example, the mitzvah of getting married. The mitzvah of getting married, right? Somebody has a viable option to get married and start a family now.
You should do it.
But they might find a better girl
Nah,
next year.
no such thing.
So the din is that we assume that you will live for the next 30 days.
They're married.
If you assume, that's how we pass an halacha. If you are reasonably sure,
Is that really how you wait? Is that really
Correct.
Is that really what you do?
correct. Meaning,
Yeah, he needs to drop that.
if you assume that you are going to find a better girl in the next month, you can wait. You can wait on this one. But if not, marry her. That's the din. You are chayiv in having a family, right?
So a guy who wants to waste his time and everyone else's time should just have a series of speed dating appointments set up for once every 29 days.
Yes.
So that way he can plausibly make the pitch.
Right. Plausible. Hatzlacha rabba to that guy's
I'm gonna
family.
follow that with my children. Just,
You want to
Right.
worry about anyone really.
you don't have another date set for the next 30
No.
days. You're going with this girl. and all your grandchildren.
That's it.
Well,
Yeah.
with anything in life,
Should we
you
all
gotta-
start living?
Yes,
with
exactly.
You gotta take a stand. At a certain
Correct.
point.
So, meaning, we'll assume that if you're alive and well, that you will continue to be alive and well for the next month. But we will not say that is indefinite. You have to draw the line somewhere, right?
Oh, okay. That's what I was gonna say.
You have to draw the line somewhere. Yeah, I mean, this is the way that definitions work, because we have a status quo. We also know that status quo is going to expire. Everything in life works on rovs and chazakas, right? Majorities, that's a rov, right? That's a statistical majority, and we make determinations based on statistical majorities. And chazaka is status quo, right? Yeah.
That 30-day thing, where was that determined? Is that in a specific
Yes, the Gemara is in Yavamas and Kedushin and Ksubas. The Gemara comes up with it in a bunch of places.
Mitzvot, much like your Netflix system, are on a month-to-month basis.
Right. It's like the passwords that you have to change every 30 days, right?
Yeah.
I was saying, like, this is what the Gemara discusses. Chayishinu lemisa. Are we concerned that somebody is going to die within a period of time? The answer is yes. Yes, we are concerned. Not because we think that there's anything that is necessarily going to kill them now, but we also know that human beings don't live forever. So we have two truths. You are alive now, and we know that is not going to be infinite. So there's a line that we have to draw somewhere, right? So, and the Gemara's debate exactly how to get to this to these determinations, and there's different opinions, etc. But meaning the point is that you have to draw a line somewhere. So at some point in time, a food substance that is osir is no longer osir. Meaning at some point in time, either it has lost its flavor, it's lost its potency, it's lost its status of being osir, it's lost its capacity to make other things osir. Yeah. Asr means forbidden, right? Asr, it's a forbidden substance. At some point in time, it's going to stop being forbidden, right? It has to.
The smell wears off.
Something's going to change about it. Right.
So going back to gelatin.
Yeah.
How did that become?
We'll get there. We'll get there. That's just an example for floating in your head for the moment.
Wait, when you say it's
Isser is a forbidden, is a something that is forbidden. Asr is the adjective. Isser is the noun.
Well,
Yeah.
So when you say it can become forbidden, it only within another substance, not just in general.
Well, if I have a piece of meat that is not kosher and it's sitting on the counter, right? If somebody goes and eats it, they have violated the Isser, the prohibition of eating non-kosher meat. But if I leave it there for a month, and then somebody comes and eats it,
They might die.
aside from the fact that they might die,
Does dry aging violate this because it's like still method?
hold on a second. If I just straight up leave a piece of meat on the counter for a month, what do we call that after a month?
Aged beef.
Not food, right? That is decisively
Spoiled
not
meat.
food. It's not food, right? If I eat not food, can I violate any prohibition? No, because it's not food. It's not food.
Wow. So if you get a lot of penicillin and have a cast iron stomach, the world is yours.
Good luck.
Yeah, no.
It's not exactly your life to live.
I only
Right?
have
It's not
30
food.
days ahead of me. I think it was
That's
So not everything from a non-kosher animal is
So, but
assur
but
to
this is
ingest?
also
Correct.
Rabbi, but this is also saying not with any intention.
With intention, I eat a piece of spoiled pork that's been
Yeah.
sitting on a counter for a
You
year.
have worse things to worry about.
I
by
want
eating
meat
that
my
that's
whole
kosher or
food.
not.
You're talking
You might
to
have
the
to visit
person
the
that
ER that
rot,
time.
that I can literally tell the person I rot meat in my refrigerator for fun.
You don't
So,
lie. You ate it. It's different.
yeah, no, this
That's
is
No, no.
It's not food.
That's edible.
So yeah, this is the
Dry
shit
aging meat
right?
is still
When it
Turning
becomes
milk into
inedible,
yogurt.
it is no longer
Turning
necessary.
milk into the point is when you turn it into the point where if someone ate it, it'll just kill them or make them sick or something.
or it's not food. Meaning,
Yeah, like it's become
It's
the
not
point.
something
This-
you should eat.
and this becomes
So
incredibly
Chris,
relevant.
it's Still,
How do you define? How does halakha define food? We have a definition.
Yes.
So that's why I thought it had something to do with the whole thing where if a dog will eat it,
So
then
on
it's food.
on
Not
on
like
Pesach,
hummus.
on Pesach we refer to something edible as will a dog eat it. That is our strictest definition, right? Meaning even if a
Like a-
human
it
won't
won't eat
eat it,
tree
if a
bark,
dog
for instance.
will eat it, then it is food enough to be considered chametz. That's true of chametz. For most isurim, we say, will a normal person eat it? If a normal person, correct. Well, if a normal person wouldn't eat this,
or rather more.
It's not food.
it's not food. And this becomes incredibly relevant.
What is considered normal?
Average.
Chinese.
Mean.
No, no.
The mean in this culture.
Welcome to
Yeah.
the
Eat that.
What if you
with
have
flimsy duct tape that holds
Correct.
together the
Someone who
American
will
legal
eat
system.
something that
Reasonable person.
Be repulsive. Right. So then,
To you.
yeah.
Exactly.
So-
Where does
so-
subjectivity ends?
So
And how does
it
it
doesn't.
define food? Please, can we get a definition?
edible to most people.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Edible to most people. That's food.
All right. Yeah.
This becomes incredibly relevant, gentlemen. When
That's
you talk about
Chevra,
if you take whatever it is, like omega-3 from an eel and grind it down and like put it into a pill, is that osir?
It's medicine.
Based on what you're saying,
It's not food.
it should be.
It's not
But
food.
based on what I know in
It's not food.
reality,
It's
It
medicine.
is.
It
So
are you benefiting from a non?
So-
you're not.
so let me be very
What's
clear
the-
here.
what's the
Whoa.
answer?
You are.
Let-
It's avoided it.
Whoa, let me be very clear here. As far as the Torah is concerned, mi de'oraisa, on a biblical level, it is not food, and therefore, eating it is not prohibited.
So I can take my krill oil supplements.
Now, that being said, when it comes to non-kosher food, there are chumras, stringencies, and isurim midrabanan that some of them which are law and some of them which are custom, and we're going to get to all of that.
Yeah.
That, practically speaking, if you treat something as food, that's category number one. Even if it's not food, it is problematic. And two is if you are getting nutrients from it, even if it's not food, maybe we should consider it as food. But strictly speaking, if somebody needs it, and this example comes up every single year, Yom Kippur time, people say to me, can I take this pill on Yom Kippur? The answer is yes, regardless of what the pill is. Why? It's not food. Pills are not food. Unless you're like a teenage girl, in which case that's like portions, right?
Why did I hear that they have these time release ones? Why is there a concern to take the pill before you're
Because people struggle with swallowing.
There's no
without
water. You can't drink it with water. So some people can't swallow the pill just by
Right.
mouth.
Hey, you gotta cool that saliva real
Yeah,
nice.
especially
Right.
That's
In the
enough.
morning.
But let's understand, if it's not food, it's not osir, right? It's not food.
Dip it in olive oil.
Now, let's talk about things that are food, but have lost their status because they have lost physical properties of being noticeable.
What about food that's burnt to all heck?
Also not food.
Yeah, so you just make a charcoal briquette out of your Brooks Brothers brick because you're bad at cooking.
You don't want to eat it.
Right.
Yeah, I know. That's my point.
That is not food.
If I burn bacon beyond the point of where it's edible.
The idea is if it's beyond the point of being edible, you don't want to eat it. You're not going to want to
Yeah,
eat
that's
it.
the point.
I mean,
It's still delicious. then it's
bacon
still
ash
delicious.
infused chillin, go for it. It'll taste disgusting. But
I
what?
don't know.
It'll-
That's what, but if it still has the flavor.
Then it's still usser.
If it doesn't.
No,
so
that's the point.
threshold.
No,
And this is what we're going to talk
no,
about.
No, you'd have to cook it to the point where you cringe and almost vomit when you're eating it. At that point, yeah, you could eat it.
So
What if you like?
let's see this inside the tour again, gents. Take a look. Dine Tarovis Ubitulan. We're over here. Dine Tarovis Ubitulan. Let's just review this very quickly. What we pointed out last time. Amar Rabbi Yochanan Kol Isurim Shebatara B'Shishim. Rabbi Yochanan says that all prohibitions in the Torah are nullified 1 to 60. Amar Rava says to him, Amar Rabbanan B'Taima, Amar Rabbanan B'Kfela, Amar Rabbanan B'Shishim. Sometimes it can be tasted. If you have truma, for example, food that only a kohen is allowed to eat, that falls in, only a kohen is allowed to eat truma, right? That's the tithe that's given to the kohen. If that falls in to food that belongs to a regular Jew, so the kohen can taste it because he's allowed to eat it, right? If he says, "Oh no, it tastes like the truma substance," so then it's fine for him, but not for me, right? I'm not a kohen. If he says, "No, it doesn't taste like anything," right? Then it's good for everybody because that flavor no longer exists. Molecules of the substance might be in the mixture, but since the flavor is not recognizable, is not noticeable, it's not a problem.
Did the Gemara and the rabbis in the Gemara recognize molecules?
So what we refer to molecules, we're talking a physical property. What the Gemara refers to, what we would refer to as molecules, the Gemara refers to as noticeable taste. Flavor.
Those are two different things.
Well,
Nope.
no, it's saying that the minimum threshold for your molecules to matter is when it meets this critical mass, that it has this.
That it provides flavor.
I don't like using sciencey terms in halakha because they didn't use those terms.
So we'll see that they did to a certain extent. So
The ancient Greeks came up
the reason that I say this is because when you ask the question of where does that flavor come from,
Oh, they have like these tasticles.
monads.
something, right? Something.
They call them something.
But there's something,
Yeah.
flavonoids, or right,
Yeah.
like whatever that thing is that provides
Call it
flavor.
out as a
We
flavor.
call them molecules, yes. Like I mean, something we would
Flavors.
right. So
Tasticles.
there you go.
They give it some sort of mathematical value.
Right.
100 molecules equals, you can taste it.
Whatever it
50
is.
molecules, you
Now, it might depend on the
Onions,
food,
wow.
and this is important. This is important. Is it might depend on the food itself. For example, a small amount of olive oil in a soup, you will not taste.
Depends how strong.
The same quantity of olive oil that you wouldn't taste in a soup, if it was ghost pepper, you would.
Fair enough.
Yes?
I want us to do a taste
Well,
test
that's
for
right.
the exact proposition
I'm not
and
in.
for it to be filmed.
I think
I
you
like
taste
the
olive
question.
oil, but you'll.
No, no.
I'm not gonna-
Either way, you would
I'm
notice
not
the
in.
ghost pepper
I'm
a
saying,
lot more.
if you took a dropper,
Yeah.
right?
Not an
You're not
And-
gonna
and-
taste, whoa, there's olive oil in this.
Right, you wouldn't taste the olive oil in the
I don't know, I have
soup.
a pretty good palate.
Okay. that's
No,
fine.
remember, not an expert taster.
I'm not an expert taster. I'm just a regular guy.
Right. No.
So just face it.
You are
just
far from a
said-
regular
You
guy.
wanted to say
You are
on
an
the record?
extraordinary guy. But you
And-
probably
and I
have
speak with
slightly above
confidence
average
and
palate.
read things on the internet.
You agree, though, that there are certain foods that are far more tasteable than other foods,
Yes.
right? Yeah,
Everything.
They have different intensities of flavor.
right. And that's important here.
Okay.
That's important because there are certain
So you need
substances.
smaller amounts for more intensities.
Right.
We're measuring flavor and the ability to taste.
Correct.
Threshold every single time.
Correct.
Or if it's a 60th.
So the question that we're going to now ask is that 60th rule broken by ghost peppers?
Is it?
Probably.
So, meaning is 60 an approximation or is 60 a definition?
Approximation.
Most likely an approximation.
That
Right.
opens up a whole other can of worms.
Correct.
Where do you go to the next?
What about
Correct.
a can of worms?
Right.
Literally a can of worms.
What if you
let something? Oh, never mind.
sit in your can of worms?
It's
What if you
actually a
let-
good,
What if you
good
let?
example because if you've had blood is fairly, this is unclear, blood is a pretty subtle flavor in about milk.
Yeah.
Ham happens to have a very pungent smell and flavor.
Right.
So if you're talking about ham, it is on the way to ghost peppers. So it makes
Yeah.
sense. If you dropped a little bit of bacon into milk, you would probably taste a tiny bit as opposed to the blood.
Yes. And that's important. Meaning, whether or not that flavor is noticeable is whether or not the substance, the mixture is also. So the Gemara says that there are 3 ways of determining this. You can either have a Jew that is allowed to taste the whole mixture, taste it, or you could have, in theory, a non-Jew taste the whole thing. He's allowed to. Or, in the absence of a Jew that can taste it and a non-Jew that can taste it, we approximate to 1 in 60.
Yeah.
Now, what we spoke about last time was the opinion of the Rashba and the opinion of the Rosh, whether or not the non-Jew that you are presenting this to needs to be an expert taster and needs to not know how important this is for you. Ayeli, bedtime.
I didn't get the.
Quick, run.
Question.
Yes.
The Jew who's tasting the admixture to determine whether or not it's Kosher, is he not concerned that he'd be violating the law? If
No,
not-
but he's
Oh,
he's allowed to. He's a kohen, meaning there's certain foods that only a kohen is allowed to eat.
So this is for the
Not
very
a conscious
specific.
decision.
Yes,
So this is
It's a
for the
mindset
very
privilege.
specific instance of whether or not his special food
is present in the mixture.
okay.
Yeah.
So that's for that situation. What if we're concerned about just more general questions of Koshers? Blood in the milk is an example.
Right.
So a Jew would never be the one who's allowed to do the
Correct, to do the
frontline food
tasting.
testing.
Right.
You'd have to get your boyfriend to come over.
Yes.
And be your cautious boy
Yes.
to supplement his Shabbos going.
Yes.
Okay.
Would be my boyfriend.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Some Asian
Would a
bride
visual
could
cue
come.
provide the buckle bashisha?
Most likely, yeah.
But there might be
So,
something else.
so he said,
Obvious, like-
If it's obvious that it looks like it's
fellow worker,
it's pink, right?
Well, it can't be an
Right.
extra bashisha part.
correct.
Because
So you can see that there's blood there.
Huh?
Okay. Take a look on the second side of the page, page Reshim and Vav. Middle of the middle paragraph, exactly
Right.
halfway down.
Middle paragraph?
Meaning-
Second of the page, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
This area that begins with the word shesomchin alav, meaning is beheter, and with the word after the period. Says the Torah like this: Minshin is arev b'minoi, a substance that is mixed in with itself, meaning non-kosher milk that's mixed into kosher milk.
Hmm.
You can't taste test that.
milk is milk.
Tastes like
You
milk.
can't taste just the sweat of the brow of the hardworking Jew who's making our challah of Israel milk.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
It's always spoiled like 2 days later.
Right. That's
Because it took so long to get over here.
So minshin is arev b'minoi. If you have non-kosher milk that was mixed into kosher milk, or non-kosher cholent, a little bit fell into the kosher cholent, right? Minshin is arev b'minoi. Deleka lemeka matayma. You can't taste test it. There's no way of figuring out based on taste. Kagayin chalav be'shuman, for example, says the Gemara, says the Torah, chelev v'shuman. Chelev and shuman are 2 kinds of fats. Those that were at the Shechita event, we noted that there are 2 kinds of fats. Broadly speaking, it is intermuscular fats versus intramuscular fats. The fat that surrounds the internal organs is called chelev. That is forbidden fats. We don't eat that. The days of the Beis Hamikdash, if you brought a carbon, that gets put on the mizbeach. That gets burnt
It's
up.
forbidden to us because of its designated role.
It's forbidden in general.
So not even
Why?
Kohanim.
Correct.
Why is it forbidden? What does the Gemara say?
That's a pasuk.
To cook. No?
That's it is within the same prohibition as
And
not
which
eating
fat-
blood.
Which fat is that again?
We're talking about the fat that surrounds the internal organ,
Sheathing the organs to like insulate.
meaning the fat that surrounds the
So,
kidneys.
so typically the non-edible fat in general.
Is that? Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
The,
But-
the fat on the
but-
The
on
fat
the
that
rib
even
bone.
typically non-Jews would eat.
Yes.
I mean,
Well,
Yes.
It's just a non.
Nobody around the world would eat.
No, I mean no. There's 2
Yes.
types. There's
Yes.
fat-
So- Yeah, but
No, it's a non-edible salt. I mean,
correct.
Yeah.
Although there are parts of it that are edible. There are parts that are edible. it tastes the same as other fat. Tastes the same, right? Meaning, if you were to have both of them in a pot and melt it down,
Okay, yeah.
you wouldn't taste, there's chalev in here.
Kidney fat?
Right.
That's how you're-
It tastes different than other fat. No, it tastes the same.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Practical question related to this. So is this why it's hard to find kosher beef tallow? Because we don't process.
There's
the
not-
No, because
majority of
nobody
the
wants
fat.
to spend the
There's
time.
not enough of a demand for it
It's an
to.
expensive process.
Yeah.
But is it expensive in
Just
general,
thinking
and then
about
it'd be more so because you can't use any of the organ?
When there's
fat?
enough people that want to use beef tallow, somebody will do it.
Like grow and
There's
It'll be a
behold,
thing.
tallow
like
out
grow and
there
behold
for
will
goyim.
sell it probably.
Maybe,
Like,
yeah.
if enough people want it, but like it's gonna cost way too much for the common Jew to want to buy it.
You're right.
Specialty product.
I'm saying, would a Jew have a worse cost ratio because the only
It's just
source of the
supply and
fat we
demand.
could use? Well, hear me out, right?
Almost-
The difference between a goyish trade, whatever,
Yeah.
non-kosher product, the kosher product is that the goyim can take
More
all
fat.
the fat on the animal,
Yeah.
including all that tasty organ fat that would go nowhere anyway. They can make time of that.
Could
whereas
be,
we
yeah.
would only be able to take it.
Yeah, I don't know what fats they make tallow out of, but maybe.
That was my question.
Right, I don't know.
And it just costs money to package it and ship it.
So,
It takes
Let's
time.
Like, you
let's
can't
let's
buy
just
kosher
finish.
bone
Let's
broth,
just finish.
for example.
Let's just finish this point. Yeah. So he gives two examples.
Wait,
You have
hold on.
yeah,
Can I
yeah.
just cut off? So grown and
Oh.
behold actually sells beef fat at $10.49 a pound.
There you
and
go.
It tells you how to make it into.
Wait, who
beef
says
tallow.
this?
Grow and behold, you can buy it.
Only $10 a pound?
$10.49 a pound. for
That's
beef
Only
fat.
$10.
It's not processed. It's unprocessed.
They're telling you how to make it from what they're.
Oh, I don't want. I want it done for me.
right.
I want it in a jar.
It
Right.
says
I'm
to.
about to say,
Basically, you can go to him.
Beef tallow, I'll make it for
Can you get me beef? Can you get me beef fat
That's
at
gonna cost
at
a
the
lot
Grove?
more after
So-
I render it.
All right,
We'll
conversations
do
for
this
later.
side
Good.
hustle after this. Sorry.
Okay. So he says, "Kagain chelev b'shuma," like if you have forbidden fats inside of permissible fats. He says, "Umin b'she'enamina," or alternatively, blood in milk, veleka kvela, and you don't have a non-Jew to ask b'shishim. That our standard definition is 1 in 60, meaning that is our standard definition. Now, fundamentally, theoretically speaking, if it was blood in milk and you did have a non-Jew that you could rely on, says the Tur, go for it. Now, by the time we get to the Shulchan Aruch says, yeah, but nobody does that today for a lot of different reasons. But theoretically, in terms of the physics and chemistry of halacha, what we are talking about is the presence of flavor in a mixture. That's what we are looking to not have, is the flavor in the mixture. What happens if it's exactly the same flavor? So then the definition is 1 in 60. That's the definition. Now, says the Tur thereafter, he says, U Pei Resh Shin Yud, which stands for U Pei Resh Rashi. And Rashi explains, Had the Samchinen Akfela, that which we are relying on, a non-Jew taste tester, Dafka B'De'i Kashishim. Rashi says, you can only invoke your non-Jewish taste tester if you already have a 1 to 60 ratio.
Or else it's irrelevant.
So he says, Va'afilu hachi, and even so, lo shari, you are not allowed to eat the food, ad shita'amenu kvela, until the non-Jew tastes it. Aval kvela below shishim or shishim below kvela loy. Rashi holds that you need both in order to make it permissible. You need 1 in 60 and a non-Jewish taste tester. Now that's a high standard. That's Rashi's standard. Rashi says you need both. He says, Vahani mila b'de'ika kfela. And that is only if you do have a taste tester. Aval min b'minoi, get this is Rashi's opinion. Aval min b'minoi, but if you are talking about non-kosher milk inside of kosher milk, or forbidden fats inside of permissible fats, so on the bottom line here, Deloi shayach beitimus kfela. I'm going to go to the next page. You don't have this part. He says, Deloi shayach, I'll print out I'll print out like the rest of the simon for next week. It says, Deloi shayach beitimus kfela, that no non-Jew is going to be able to taste the difference ever. If you don't have a non-Jewish taste tester, says the Tur, says the Tur, we don't rely on Rashi. Our approach is that 60 is enough. 60 is enough. Now, it happens to be, and this is an interesting debate. One of Rabbi Yehuda in Maseches Chulin in the Mishnah holds that min b'mina, that a substance inside of a exact like substance is never butter, because there is no way of determining if it's still there or not. It's an impossibility. Meaning, maybe we should say you'll never know. And since you can never resolve that doubt, you can't approximate how to resolve the doubt either. So, no go.
Right. So it's art. So that's just never. It's just,
Never, right? If a drop of non-kosher milk falls into kosher milk, it's done.
you know it. You've seen it.
You saw it. You saw it. There's just no way.
It's just we're done.
Min b'mina is not going to be butter ever, right?
Okay.
Say that again.
Min b'mina, according to Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah, is never going to be butter, because it cannot fundamentally become nullified.
What's the example?
How do you know?
Witnessing something.
If you saw a drop of non-kosher milk fall into kosher milk,
Yeah.
there's no way of ascertaining whether that flavor is still there.
So you can't drink it.
Contrary to that, Rabbi Yehuda's, what the Torah is saying is we don't pass it like that.
They don't pass it like that.
Right.
So why did he reject the Goyish or the?
So we'll see that we'll do a second now and then we'll explain that. So the Ramban Chilek, the Ramban disagrees. Heicha shemakirin ha'isur v'lo nis'ar mimenu ela tzir v'tamai. The Ramban explains, according to Rashi, explains the Ramban now, where you can recognize the prohibition, v'lo nis'ar mimenu ela tzir v'tamai, and the only thing that has gone into your mixture is flavor. For example, if you had in your cholent a piece of non-kosher meat that fell into your cholent, and you can scoop the meat out, right? It sat there for a couple of minutes, and you're like, oh my gosh, that was not kosher. Oh no, but I can see it. I'm going to pull it out. Is the rest of the cholent kosher?
Yes.
Wait,
There's no physical.
but wait,
That's what she's
hold on. Wait, we just talked about the fact that we saw something.
Non-kosher meat.
Oh, probably here, no way.
Non-kosher
We
meat.
don't pass it that
Ah,
way.
so
It
no.
also depends if is it 1 in 60.
So let's just understand what is now in your cholent. Some molecules. There's something. Right, something. There's something that's there. Tiravatama, right? There's like sweat and flavor, right? There's something that's left behind from this piece.
Sweat, are you saying SWEAT or SUET?
Whatever you want. Right?
Also depends if it's hot or
So he says,
Different stuff.
it says, what we are evaluating it against is the flavor that is there, not the substance. The Ramban is differentiating here. It says, are we trying to nullify the substance or the flavor? These are different things. These are different things, and we're going to differentiate between them next week. He says, we don't know how much flavor is there. How many molecules have been left behind? We don't know. So he says, there, if you could have a non-Jew taste testing it and you could tell the difference, meaning if there was some piece of meat that fell into your, I don't know, milchik French onion soup, right? And a non-Jew could then taste it and be, it does taste like beef, right? Or it doesn't taste like beef. He says, even though there isn't 60 against the piece of meat that fell in, there is 60 against the flavor. Because what's left? You scoop the meat out. You have 60 against the flavor. He says,
You know it was in there.
he says, Aval ksheguva isun is arev, when the piece of meat melted into it. You can't find the piece of meat anymore. Now what do you have to nullify? The meat, right? Now you have to nullify the volume of meat. So the Ramban says that there's two different things to talk about here. One is the volume of prohibited item. and the other is the flavor of prohibited item. These two things both need to be nullified. It says, it says, as when you are trying to nullify a known volume, we don't care about the taste tester. Because even if it doesn't taste like anything, the mass of what you have there is prohibited. You need 60 times more in order to get rid of the volume, the mass, the quantity of prohibited substance, regardless of flavor. But if you had 60 times more, it would be allowed. Then you don't have to go and look for a non-Jew to taste test it. Says the Ramban, there are two things that you need to nullify. Some things, it says there are two separate halachas. Sometimes you need a non-Jew taste tester, and that is if you are trying to nullify taste. Sometimes you need 60 times the amount of substance, and that is if you are trying to nullify the volume, the substance of it.
That's if you've seen something. Or you
Right.
know something. So like,
Right.
I know that.
No, but it's very
Just two separate issues.
The ghost thing is a perfect example.
Right.
where one would be minimum, but the other would be very tough to fulfill.
Yes.
And you could do a flip version of something that has no taste,
No flavor whatsoever.
massive volume of it. Though.
Yes.
Unkosher tofu. I don't know,
Right.
That you shove in a kosher thing. And
Right.
The math part, the mass, whatever you call it, the 60 times that is you're never going to get to.
Never, right?
So yeah, it's very interesting.
So
So,
there's two thresholds. One is taste,
correct.
and one's volume.
Correct.
They have to jump through both.
And is that how we pass
The
it?
land on the other side.
That's the Ramban. We're going to get to how we pass in a moment. He says,
And he's similar to Rashi, but not strict about it.
right, so that's opinion number 2, opinion number 3, and we'll summarize in a second. This is the Pirish. The this is, as we noted, the Torah quotes Ashkenazim and Sfardim. Rashi is Ashkenazi, the Ramban is Sfardi, the is Ashkenazi. The Pirish, the Bechol Inyan Savchin Nakfela. That on all matters, all that you require is a taste tester. Even if you have less than 60. But if you have 60, you don't need a taste tester ever. Even if there is, even if there's a taste tester right next to you, you don't have to ask him his opinion. And this is how the Rosh holds as well. There are 3 opinions in halacha. Do you need either a taste tester or 60? That's do you need both a taste tester and 60? Meaning, taste tester, you only call him if you know that you have 60 times more.
Otherwise, it's just non-starter.
Otherwise, non-starter. That's Rashi, right? Unless you have 60, don't even talk. There's nothing to talk about. Says the Ramban, nuanced opinion. It depends on what you're trying to nullify. Are you trying to nullify flavor? Or are you trying to nullify volume? What are you trying to get rid of here? And then you have the opinion of the which is, again, if you have a taste tester, you don't need 60, regardless of what fell in. If the guy tastes it and he says there's nothing there, if it's tofu, he says it doesn't taste like tofu because tofu doesn't taste like anything, then you're good.
Tofu tastes like something.
I mean, not if there's any other flavors.
Stomach pain and estrogen.
No,
I'm allergic to soy, so that's really accurate in my case.
Right?
Well, tofu has a flavor. I can taste it in my
Yeah, it
brain.
tastes
In your
like
brain.
damp, soggy, musty.
What do you eat tofu with?
Tastes like mold.
More tofu. Exactly. The thing that you eat tofu
It has like a
with is the
slight-
flavor
is-
that you associate with tofu.
It has a slight yummy flavor.
You eat tofu with asparagus, it tastes a little like asparagus.
Mostly by itself, it tastes just a little bit like sadness.
Yeah, that's accurate.
It tastes like all your Jewish
I'm not-
ancestors saying, we
Like
eat
a
on
rice-
Shabbos.
Right,
You live in America in 2022. How can you not afford it?
right. So the Re says if there is a taste tester there and he can taste it, great. Because the only thing that we care about is whether or not you can taste it. If you can't taste it, it's not there. That's called bittul. That's called bittul. And if there's 60 times, you don't need the taste tester because that is fundamental bittul. Either or. So you have either you need both.
In all scenarios?
Yeah, in all scenarios.
You know the ghost pepper? If you have
All right, so we'll get to the ghost pepper. Yeah,
So there's exceptions to this. rule.
correct. The question if we splice it up here is, what are we trying to nullify here?
The flavor.
So says the what we are trying to nullify is the flavor. If the taste tester says it's not there, then it's not there. And if you have 60 times more, then we have a definitional it's not there. Rashi says, once you've hit the threshold of 60, now it's possible to nullify it. It might be nullified, it might not be, called the taste tester. And the Ramban says, well, it depends on what it is that you are trying to nullify. Are you trying to nullify flavor? Good, call a taste tester. Are you trying to nullify tofu? You need 60 times more.
Mm-hmm. So, under the opinion that's just pure volume, you could. Sorry, is this assuming non-intentionality, or is this covering both?
This is we're not even talking about intention. We are talking about, is this a forbidden mixture?
Well, because if someone then, I guess maybe cynically isn't the right word to use. If someone cheekily tries to
put it in there,
let's
yes.
say they use an extract, an ultra concentrated flavor from a non-kosher source for a non-kosher food item. So the source is non-kosher, the flavor is non-kosher. He drops it in. It's a drop. It's doing its job. The craftsman was good at it, but it's a drop.
And it influences the whole thing, right? Non-kosher,
the whole thing.
non-kosher truffle oil, right? Whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Super concentrated.
It's called bacon oil.
Bacon oil. There you go.
There we go. Bacon, truffle,
Bacon
whatever
essence.
you call it.
Right.
Yeah. The essence of pig sweat. So
Whatever they put in the Yankee Candle. Yeah.
Yeah.
That stuff.
Exactly. Just they take a flake of the Yankee Candle, they put it in there, and so now you have a stock pot. Obviously, we're talking thousands of times, maybe more,
Right.
volume than the drop, but it did its job. It tastes like pig sweat.
Yeah.
So by Flavor Town rules, or sorry, by Volume Town rules, not Flavor
No
Town.
problem.
No problem.
No problem. But except that, as Noach, the big tzaddik, has noted, that there have to be things that break these rules.
Yeah, intuitively, there's got to be.
There have to be things that.
If flavor seems to be the trump, you can taste it, therefore it's not.
But under one of
Right.
these divisions of rules, if you were in that jurisdiction, then it's pure volume. By that rule
But
alone,
no one seems to really hold that position.
but we're saying if you're there,
Right.
Russia doesn't hold that position.
Monaco might be a very small place, but when you're in Monaco, Monaco's laws apply. So if we're in Monaco land,
Right.
But nobody holds by
So
Monaco land.
he's
But
saying,
we're
he's saying
in Monaco.
theoretically, this question will only exist with the right? That if you know that you have 60 times more than your Yankee Candle bacon flake,
Takes what?
right? So if you know, so then you don't have to taste test it. But even according to the we would probably assume that if the whole thing smells like bacon because it's super duper highly concentrated bacon essence, and now your French onion soup smells and tastes like bacon. So hold up a second. Maybe this would be a problem even according to the Maybe the is saying just in normal circumstances that if all we care about is volume, then 60 against is more than enough. That opinion of the is important because, says the Torah, that's how my father, the Rosh, holds as well, right? Meaning this isn't a out there opinion. This is the and this is the Rosh, and ultimately seems to be the last word that the Torah is bringing on this topic as well, is that if you have 60 against, you don't call the guy. You don't say, hey, come and taste it. If you have 60 against, we assume that it's fine.
That's typically the case.
Yes.
Most of the time.
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, anybody that has ever had these questions, you will know you've never called me or another rabbi and they've said, do you have a non-Jewish neighbor that happens to be a really good taste tester?
We didn't know about this so often. Now we're
Right.
calling you.
So the answer is no, we don't pass it like that. We pass it like this, Rush.
What about the anti-Semitic neighbors that told Noah and Dr. Feller?
Alright, you
I
know,
can ask
yeah.
them to come and taste my soup, right? They'll really participate.
Right, they would love to.
They would love.
Tell
Now we
me,
know, Rabbi. Now we know.
sniff this. Does it smell like chloroform to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wants to buy him timber. So I'm
Right.
trying to do my duty.
Okay, Chevra, what we have concluded here this evening is that there are definitions. Aleph is that there are definitions by which you need to draw lines and say certain things are allowed and certain things are not allowed, and that things expire from their status in some way, shape, manner, or form, right? Meat that has rotten is no longer called food. Flavor that is no longer present is not called flavor. And now we need to figure out at what point in time does a flavor no longer become a flavor. And there are many, many, many definitions and rules that we are going to talk about. One of the most important of which, and this is one of the most practical halachas, is a flavor, not a food, but a flavor that is more than a day old.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
A flavor that's more than a day old is what we call in halacha Einoi ben yoma. If I have a piece of meat, and I put it in the fridge, that meat is good for tomorrow, right?
Use roto crop?
I'm saying
Yes, we did.
That-
This is why we can use we could use an oven and then wait a day and then. have
But-
it.
Line 6, bring a little
But-
back.
Reynolds rock, all right.
But the flavor of the meat that was absorbed into the walls of my pot, right? That meat flavor residue. That's not the actual meat itself. It's just meat flavor.
Why weren't you using glass?
So- By the way, we'll talk about that.
Oh, really?
We'll get there. Talking about standard like earthenware from, you know, 500 years ago. The flavor that's absorbed into the walls of that vessel is no longer good flavor a day later. That day, right? Anybody that's ever cooked before, so you sauteed onions in a pan. You took all the onions out, and then you, I don't know, made rice. So you have like a little bit of flavor.
Yeah.
Onions is a.
I'm giving that example.
Yeah.
I'm giving that example specifically because it is a pungent flavor. But the next day, whatever onion flavor is left is not good onion flavor. 24 hours later, that flavor is what is called tam pogum. It's no longer a good flavor. It doesn't add. It detracts. It's spoiled.
Interferes, yeah.
That flavor is now spoiled.
They didn't wash their pans.
Oh, please understand.
Onions don't
With all the
know
water they
they're
had,
feeble
it
at
does.
Oh,
all.
when you're talking about something that's like cast iron.
No.
Cast iron.
Cast iron.
is
So no, let's just talk about a world where water is at a premium, one, and soap doesn't exist.
right.
So
And you're cooking out of
They didn't have
stone.
dishwashers?
right,
Oh my god.
Yeah,
You're
they
cooking- and you're
was.
cooking out of stone.
Sam, they
Right.
was.
They didn't
Right.
have toilets.
they didn't have running water, right?
It was so much better back then.
Exactly.
It was so much better before.
Cover. We will talk about all of this and more about Hashem next week. Wishing you all a wonderful evening.
Ralph, thank you so much for having us.
Happy birthday.